Good evening, everyone. As part of England Football Learning, in partnership with the League Managers Association and the League Coach Association, I'm delighted to bring you the next and final coach development series. And today we'll be looking to work with Ian Burchnall, who is the head coach of Wolverhampton Wanderers. Just for housekeeping, please have all cameras off. Please have your computers muted, and hopefully you'll enjoy this webinar today. With me today, as part of England Football Learning, I have the dream team of Vinny Halsell and Emily Senior, who will be sort of probing Ian Burchnall with questions around his experience in the National League. So it's been a bit of a journey, okay. I'm sure some of you really enjoyed the process, what we brought to the table around the coach development series. This is the last one, hopefully not the last one for us trying to develop our coach development portfolio. You started off with Understanding Self with Rob Edwards, moving on to Coaching Craft with Nathan Jones, and then really exploring individual player potential with Neil Hartley. And then the last webinar today will be around game approach with Ian Burchnall. And just bear in mind, and we did see some of you at the St George's Park National Conference, which was brilliant to see. And we have some real guest speakers on the day from Craig Fay, from Maidstone, David Horseman from Forest Green as well. But bear in mind, and we'll talk about it much length later on as well, our event this week at Manchester face-to-face. So what's the webinar about today? We're really exploring that real understanding around game approach. Okay, we're going to be looking at how we use our game approach and we apply strategy and tactic to solve game problems within the system and styles of play. So you can start looking at things in your own context as well. And I'm sure you've been watching the Euros as well and working out what England's sort of performance problems were, how they solved and brought solutions to the game. But the most important thing is we want to really get a real grasp and understanding of what game approach is. And just listening to Ian Burchnall when he's on, really reflect on his insights and his experience. Ian will take us into a bit of a deeper dive around performance problems versus solutions in the 11v11 game. And there's an opportunity also for you folks to really reflect on the webinar and what it looks like in your context. So there is a Q&A function, if you can get access to there now. And if you can start populating the Q&A box around what does game approach mean to you? So while that's coming on, if Vinny and Emily want to join me.
Hi, Pav. How you doing?
Vinny, you okay?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Emily, you good?
Hi, Pav. Good to be here, everyone. Good evening, everybody. Really excited to be here and to delve a little bit deeper with Ian himself very shortly as well.
What's coming back on the Q&A function, Vinny?
Yeah, first one in. Thank you, Chris Robson. We've got the key preparation points for the match ahead throughout the week. So really zoning in on a singular game, if you like. Kofi Hagen, thanks, Kofi, has talked about very similar, preparing your team tactically and technically for a match day. So again, that's singular game approach. Matt O'Toole, game approach is the preparation of ideas and plans you want to try and use. So maybe broadens out a little bit there. Thank you, Matt. Rich Foster, thank you. Environment, plan and preparation. So brought in the concept of environment. And last one for now, Pav, we've got Chris Knott. An understanding of how we plan to prepare and deliver a game plan. Interesting term, straight in. With an understanding of the opponent in relation to our principles. So quite a varied bag there, but some good things to summarise. Some people targeting a singular game, and then Chris there talking about a broader idea around your game plan linked to principles. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone.
Well, let's try compare that to some of the top managers out there then. So thanks for that, Vinny. So Johan Cruyff, so we had that football is a game of mistakes. whoever makes the fewest mistakes wins. So he talked about adaptability. So I'm sure that was in there, Vinny, as well. So we've got a few with Johan Cruyff and Alex Ferguson's in our sort of Q&A function today. And the stuff around what Alex Ferguson talked about, formation and tactics, was talked about, what I heard there. And obviously Pep, when he talks about sort of playing to your strengths and minimising the weaknesses. And we can't forget about our man Arsene Wenger. Football's about winning, it's about rebuilding stuff as well. So I do apologise, Vinny. I know you might want Jurgen Klopp on there as well. So what would you think Jurgen Klopp would say about game approach?
Yeah, I think Klopp would very much initially come from an authenticity point of view, in terms of his personal values, his beliefs, not least around that importance of the whole team structure and everybody playing a part in that. And I think his would also be very much a holistic approach, in terms of, obviously, yes, the technical and the tactical, but also the physical side. But most importantly, perhaps, is that mental and that psychological approach to the game as well. So I think from the earlier responses that we had in, that broader game plan, if you like, or game model, I think that's where Jurgen would come from, a very much a whole club perspective, naturally for the first team, but also feeding down into the younger age groups.
And what I love at the bottom there as well, around Serena Wigman talking about the team is like a puzzle. Every player is unique, and it's about sort of finding the perfect fit to each piece. And Emma Hayes talks about intensity, aggression, creativity. It's all about the players. What's your thoughts on that, Emily, around some of them bottom quotes?
Yeah, I think there's some really key themes pulling out here, not only from the managers that we're looking at now, but also from the people that have answered in the Q&A box as well. I think there's a common theme around philosophy and how clearly that links your own values as a coach, links to the way that you want to approach the game. So I think that's a clear theme throughout, and hopefully we'll be able to pick that out with Ian himself very shortly as well. But yeah, so some really good points made about the game plan and the way that we model it depending on the different variants that we come up against, whether it be different opposition, different environments that we find ourselves in. So I'll be really keen to see if Ian's had to adapt his game approach for the different environments he's been in, because there's been quite a lot. So I'm excited to see how he's adapted throughout the years.
Brilliant, Emily. Love that. So, Ian Burchnall, former colleague, worked with him at Bradford City, obviously experiencing the academy scene, a very good friend of mine as well. Obviously, he's very much been across the grassroots, not just the elite academy game as well, and also coached at university as well. So, he spent a lot of time probably further up in the Northern Hemisphere, as you can see, at the age of 29, moving assistant manager to Salzburg in the Norwegian Premier League, and then became manager at Viking at 32. Spent 3 years, obviously, at Viking FK, moving to Ostersund to replace Graham Potter. Graham Potter is another coach who came from the non-league scene as well, working at Step 6, Step 5 as well, working in university football. But his real time virtually was around when he was in the National League system with Notts County, where he really had them playing some real expensive football, really possession-based, and that's where he did really well. And hopefully he could give us some real context around his time at Notts County. And then obviously drifting into the pro game with Forest Green Rovers, and then moving into going into Europe with Anderlecht, and now amazing journey. And from some of my observations from at Leeds United and Bradford City, really diligent, really articulate, and it's no brainer why he's in a good position today. And let's bring him to the floor, Ian Burchnall.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Ian, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Good to be here, guys.
Hey, I was just looking at the fixtures. You've got a decent start, some big hitters with the Wolves.
Yeah.
Arsenal,
Yeah.
Chelsea, and Vinny's Liverpool in there.
Yeah, I think it's we had a look at the fixtures when they came out, and it's a pretty intense first 8 or 9 games. I think we play almost all of the kind of big six in that period. So it's going to be yeah, it's going to be some prep during pre-season this year.
We're really delighted having you on. And just going on to Emily's point earlier about coaching philosophy, what we want to try, can you share some real key moments, based on your bio as well, in terms of some of the key moments that shaped your coaching journey, shaped your philosophy, and shaped how you approach the game?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Pav, like I started out with more grassroots and academy football, and a lot of my early experiences were more around, yeah, academy based stuff. So a lot of developing the individuals and like really working with them to try to develop the players in an environment. So as I moved into the professional game, obviously and senior football, you still have that core grounding, and that underpins what you want to do. So even now, like it's been really important to me to try to improve the players that are in the team and the individuals, and obviously that helps create a strong collective as well. So yeah, and I think watching some of the football that you enjoy to watch, I think obviously shapes it. So growing up, you see players or coaches playing a certain style that you want, and you take bits from that and try to in the end put what you think is your product out on the pitch that represents you in the best way.
And then when you've sort of had those moments and then what I call them learning experience, and you're developing your portfolio, what aspects of that really was effective when you went to Notts County and you was working in National League? So them learnings in those early years, how did that help you and shape you when things you had to evolve, maybe change, and you found out about yourself as well, especially working then in the senior game or working in the National League?
Yeah, it's certainly not like easy going from academy football and then into that environment within the National League. There is a lot of differences, and I've been abroad for the best part of 8 years as well, working in the top leagues in Norway and Sweden, gaining some really important experiences out there about working with different players, different cultures, different ways of seeing the game. So, you know, I came back and actually the National League was the first kind of competitive senior football environment I've worked in England. I'd only worked with under 16s prior to that. University football I had experience in as well. But so going into Notts County, it was quite a steep learning curve. I'd say the first 8 or 9 games were a massive learning curve. I came with a real idea of what I wanted it to look like, and it didn't look like that straight away. But lucky I was brought in by chairmen that were aware of what I'd done in Scandinavia. They were quite aware of the style of football that I played at Östersund and the clubs in Norway. So they had plenty of patience with it, which was really important. But yeah, going into the National League was a very different environment to one that I've been before. So like learning about that environment and what the football looks like there was quite important to be able to. I still wanted my principles to come across, but I had to understand the best way to get these players to do it in this environment. So, you know, without compromising too much on what you think the game should look like, still being able to draw some success and have it feel like it looks like your team.
And just in terms of your principles as well, just around the National League, was there times when it evolved and you thought, well, this isn't working, I maybe need to adapt? Obviously, you're talking that sort of jump from sort of youth football into senior men's,
Yeah.
and you've got a lot of experience within the National League, those in that squad as well.
Yeah.
And how did that sort of help you navigate through that as well?
I mean, I was lucky that I went into a really good club with good facilities and a good squad. So that helps when you want to try to win games and play a certain way. So I was fortunate with the quality of the players that I had, but I was also fortunate that the players wanted to do it. They wanted to improve. Some of them were ambitious to go on and go higher. So like being able to develop them was big, and they felt that sort of football would help them do that. So yeah, you definitely come up with some challenges when you get in there, but I certainly think like getting the buy-in from the players is massively important, and making them understand like how it might benefit them as football players. But when I first went in there, it was COVID, so it was really difficult to get any buy-in from supporters. All they could see on a Saturday was the result that clocked up on Sky Sports or whatever. So, no one was coming to the games live. So it was actually quite difficult to get buy-in from outside of the club early on. It was only, I think, in the playoffs where fans could actually come in was the first time they actually got a look at our team. So in some ways, it was lucky that some of the bad games that we had were behind closed doors and nobody saw them. And I could just tell them on the interviews they were good.
Oh, fantastic. Just going to bring Emily now, and Vinny will have a few questions for you as well. Emily, if you fire away.
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody, as well. I went missing for a little moment there, so sorry if I've missed anything. Yeah, Ian, if I can just ask, how did your experience coaching in the National League differ to coaching in professional environments in terms of your playing philosophy, game model? Did that have to adapt? Have you had to change that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it goes without saying, like going from, say, Swedish top tier or Norwegian top tier to the National League was really different culturally and tactically. And in the National League, you're playing over 60 games a season. In Sweden, we were playing 30 league games a season. So you could say that the teams you get a lot of contact time coaching wise with the teams in Sweden. So I feel like there was every team had their own clear identity, and it was quite, it would change week to week. So having some core principles was really important. Going to the National League, like suddenly, I remember, I think the first few weeks we were playing Saturday, Tuesday. So time on the grass was quite limited. So to get the information into the players on how we wanted to change or adapt or play the game was quite difficult. A lot of classroom based stuff, and I knew that we had to have a little bit of time. But one of the, I guess, going into a bigger club in the National League, one of the things that we found was a lot of teams tried to dominate us physically. A lot of teams use set pieces as a weapon, and a lot of teams play quite low block. So we did get kind of used to repeating the game plan a lot, and it gave me a chance to, probably for the first time, not be as concerned with the opposition and really concerned with how we're going to do it. And it gave I almost we just delved so much into like buying into what we were, and not worrying what the other teams were doing as much, because we knew what we were going to face a lot of. Of course, we had to work on trying to get better at beating a low block, but we could repeat a lot of the stuff, and a lot of the problems we were facing week to week were quite similar problems. Whereas like in Sweden, going away to Malmo and then suddenly going at home to Falkenberg, there was really, really different ways of approaching it. So I felt like the players really embraced the fact that we were so driven by what we were doing and how we were developing ourselves. So certainly when I got to the National League and I went to Notts County and I said, right, we need an all-in mentality, and this is what we're going to try and do. And then within that, I kind of found, okay, in order to do this, I probably need to play with 3 centre halves, because I've never minded too much about systems. I could play with a back four or back five, or didn't matter really. The principles are important. But when I got to the National League, I had to adapt systems a little bit, because I knew we were going to face a lot of set pieces. So maybe 3 centre halves would be really beneficial. And then you could play with your wing backs based on, what sort of side maybe individuals that we were facing. So there was certainly ways that we had to adapt the game plan when we got there.
That's brilliant. That's really, really good. So with that in mind then, are there any standout matches that you can kind of remember or draw upon where you've gone, we've really implemented the game model really well there, we've got a lot of success from it, and you've used that moving forward as a bit of momentum for everything else? Do
you know what? There was a couple early on. Like I said, early on, it was COVID, so there wasn't any fans in the ground. And I remember we went away to Eastleigh, and we lost 2-0. But we actually played really well. We controlled the game and created loads of chances. And I remember the chairman calling me afterwards and just saying he thought the game was fantastic. And they were very data driven in Notts, and like very unemotional about the result. And it just said, just keep going. Like we really like what's happening. And we took the numbers to the players and tried to make them believe that the way we were doing it was right. And the first time that fans came into the ground was during the playoff. We played a playoff quarter-final against Chesterfield. We're 2-1 down, but we played so well, and it was everything that we wanted the team to look like. And it was the first time the fans were in, and they actually got to see us, which was great, because I felt like, right, we're actually going to get the buy-in from the fans here about the style of football and what we're going to do. So yeah, like getting beat, but having the chairman really believe in what you're doing, and then, you know, right at the end of the season, playing in a big game and the players being courageous enough to implement it in such a game under pressure with the fans back in, is a moment that you go, right, I think everybody's in on this now, and that's great.
Has there been any moments then when you've felt the pressure and you've felt like, you know, that might change the way that you have to approach it? Or have you always stuck to your guns in when you've been in them pressureful moments and gone, no, this is the way that we're approaching it, and I'll stick by that?
Well, I've definitely felt the pressure many times, definitely. But like, I've always been quite stubborn with how I want it to look like. So I've tried not to veer away, despite like in many different situations over the years in different clubs, you've got a lot of people with a lot of opinions on the way in which you should do things. And I think you have to be strong in what you think is the right way of doing it. And then I think it always gives you a reference point to go back to. If you've got some core beliefs and core identity that you want to call it, I think you've always got a reference point with the players and with the staff to go back to say, how close did we look like ourselves today? Were we us? Or we could be a bad version of ourselves, a really good version, but at least we were us. So yeah, I remember somebody saying to me, it's easy to talk about when you win, but it's really important what it looks like when you lose. And like, even if we lose, are we still ourselves? And can we come off and say that we did the things that we actually say that we believe in? And I think then you have to be really brave as a leader and say, I'm going to stick with it, even if I'm getting pressure or even if I'm feeling it a little bit. I think you've got to do it your own way.
Brilliant. Such great insight. And I think this leads us on really well to Vinny's next point, doesn't it, Vinny? And a question from him. So thank you for that, Ian.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Bertie, really loving the messages that you're sharing with our audience in terms of the value that you place on beliefs, on principles, and such a powerful piece around the performance. And isn't it great when sometimes you have the backing of the hierarchy, if you like, when it's not just the result at the end of the game that matters, it's the bigger process. And I've had a great question from Rich Foster in the chat, which links to actually the one I was going to pose, so I'm going to combine the two. From your National League days, was there ever a moment or a series of games where you've questioned your game approach and your game model in terms of things just not seeming to be resonating with the players? Can you give us a little example from those days?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. I mean, I think as a coach, you question yourself a lot, and you question your processes a lot. I think it's a healthy thing to do. I think you can come off after a loss and really ask yourself, like, am I doing the right things here? Like, do the players really believe in it? Do they understand it? I think you have to have those discussions with the players as well. I like to have quite open discussions. You often don't get them in big groups, but bring them into small unit meetings and talk about, like, what are we seeing? What are we feeling like when we're building up? Like, what does, you know, are we anxious? What's the issue here? Because like in the game before, we got pressed man for man and we found the solutions. What were we missing? I think like involving the players in the process is massive, and not just have a guy that's there telling everybody this is the right thing and this is what we do. Because I always found that if it's just me telling everybody what the right thing is, when we lose games, they're not going to believe me. But like really convincing them by involving them in the process, I think does get a lot of buy-in from the players, and they feel like they're contributing to the whole process. So yeah, definitely. And I'd be the first one, like when we lose games or if the game doesn't look how it should, to be really questioning, are we doing the right things? But I think that when you've answered those questions, it normally strengthens your original position that you're in. Yeah,
brilliant. I love that. And again, from that National League context, another really good question, my last one for now, has come in from Thomas Hitchings. and he's asking about how much during those particularly difficult moments did you lean on analysis? We can imagine what that looks and feels like within the elite game with the amount of staff that you have to support the process. But what about from that National League context?
Yeah, I mean, look, the like you say, like now where I am, we have an abundance of analysts, and but at National League, you maybe don't have as many, but then you have to, I think you have to have a real idea of what it is that you want to look for. And we obviously at Notts, we had staff, we had some really good staff there that were working in analysis. We'd certainly delve into that. You know, I pushed the club hard to get cameras at the training ground so we could film some sessions and delve a bit deeper into things that were happening out on the training pitch and reflecting on them. And I think like trying to get staff that want to upskill, and you know, all of the staff that we had in there, try to get them involved in the analysis process as well. And I often like just to spend time with the staff and look at bits back and discuss what we're thinking. So there's a lot of ideas coming out from that. So yeah, I'd always lean on analysis, whether it's my own or shared the assistants and the other staff in there's a massive part of like being able to reflect accurately.
Brilliant, thanks Bertie, some really good insights, and I'm sure the guys on the call tonight, many of whom, if not everyone, will be working within the National League programme, will appreciate the way you've actually brought that to that context, because as we know, context is crucial. So thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks for that, Emily, Vinny. What really resonated me with Bertie, was the way the statement around, even if we lose, are we ourselves, that authentic approach, a great key message for coaches there. So really staying on task and believing in your context and believing in your framework. We spoke earlier, Bertie, around role models. And Bobby Robson was one of your role models. John Ryan, he's talked about who's your first positive role model received. Bobby Robson, the way he managed people, you said. Mourinho, about winning mentality and leadership. The next question we just want to ask is around your approach to young players, because not only being obviously working in academies, but the National League, where you're getting players coming on loan either from league clubs, 1 and 2, or even Championship, or lads who are trying to come through the system at Nottingham as well. Yeah. So I just if you could just talk us through what was your sort of approach around that and managing that sort of dynamic when you have young players and you have senior players and you've got 3 points to fight for on a Saturday. So if you talk us through some of your insights around that, please.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, coming from an academy background, I've always had a value for working with young players and developing them and seeing that process through, because I think when you've worked and seen them come through, like the end, when you're in charge then of the end part of it, you've known all the work that's gone into it. So it is quite nice to be able to afford players the opportunity to step into that environment, and but of course you've got to prepare them in the right way. So we have players from big clubs down with us on loan. For those players, you have to try to understand what they might be thinking, because it's their first steps into professional football. It's really not easy to go out of maybe the comfort zone of an under-21s at a top club into the National League environment and adapting straight away. So you've got to appreciate that you're not say we take a player from the Championship, we're not taking a Championship player. So he isn't, even though he's come from a Championship club. He's a young player that's hoping to get to the Championship, and we're a part of that process. So like working together, letting him know that he will get developed when he's with us. He's not just there to help me get 3 points. I hope he does that. But if I can make him better, one, he returns to his parent club and they're really happy with me, and maybe we'll get more players as a result. And if we can develop him in the right way, and we do get him closer to being a Championship player, then of course it's a win-win, because he's going to be playing good football for us. And for players from our own academy, it's always great to see players as a product of your own football club, because you're seeing the guys that are working with it every day. So when that player steps on the pitch, it's been a big effort from everyone in the club. And of course, if you can develop your own players economically, it's a good thing for the football club. So I've always valued it massively, whether it's players on loan but it has to be like collaborative. Like you bring a player on loan, you have to work together with them. They're coming to help your team, and you're going to help them get better, and they know that you're going to work together on that. So yeah, I think if you take that approach to those young players, I think you can get a lot out of them. You know, even in a different context in Wolves this year, we picked a lot of injuries up after the window had closed. And then a lot of young players were afforded the opportunity to step into a Premier League environment. And those players really will have learnt a lot and have developed from that.
You know, being full-time at Notts County, it affords you to spend valuable time with players, individual units and team you talked about. And just on the call, you know, we'll have coaches on here who work from step 6, 5, 4. What strategies do you think will be good for them in terms of, from your experiences, how not actually taking shortcuts, but there's lots coming on to the chat here around individual development plans, setting out individual outcomes to support players' understanding. What kind of strategies would you say to the part-time coach working in the semi-pro game? And give us a few words of wisdom around that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've worked with like individual development plans from grassroots academy football. Even when I was in Belgium with Anderlecht, we had IDP plans for Jan Vertonghen and, you know, Belgian international players. So like, I think they're absolutely valuable. And especially if you're in that part-time environment where you don't have the luxury of 5 days a week grass time with the players, and you may be restricted on time and space. Creating those plans, and there's things that the players can go away. Maybe there's some things that are like, gym-based stuff that obviously they can go and do away from a pitch in their own time. But there's also some pitch-based individual bits that you can probably task them with and work together on. Certainly young players that are aspiring to improve will probably want to use spare time to develop that. So having some, like, always with the IDP plans, we had some like immediate targets that we want them to achieve straight away, but also some long-term targets that we think over the course of the season they'd like to improve on, develop on. And then again, like maybe bring in you can give the players some sessions they can take away and maybe do that are simple, but will bring in some either tactical or technical benefit. I also found like the bits of work I did at university football, which was like part-time coaching. When I was there, we were just getting into filming the games, and obviously giving the players some responsibility to watch their game back and feed back was massive. That would take the pressure off of some of the contact time maybe I lacked that you get afforded to in the full-time game. So yeah, giving a little bit of like autonomy around the analysis as well is big.
And just before I bring Emily in, the next question, the England C team, you had players from Notts County, and just for the coaches on the call as well. The England C team, you had 3-4 players who represented England as well. And how important was that as well for recognition of talented players within the National League system, either Conference North, Conference South, National League? How important was that? And you certainly contributed to that as well in terms of England C.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that the players were really happy to be a part of that, because they're obviously, you know, representing the nation. So for any player, that's a proud thing to be able to do. And it's recognition of, like you say, a good season or a good performance. And as a coach, when you see that, you're obviously happy that the players are involved in that. But I think it also shows when you see the quality of the players, and you'll have seen on those camps, Pav, like the quality of some of the players in the National League and below. There is some really super talented players there, and some very, very good coaches as well. And I think when you bring all that together and all those players come from different experiences, it's a great thing for everybody involved.
I think the real positive is that in terms of the work you did at Notts County and working and some of the possession-based football, you've been expansive. I think that had a massive impact on that as well. And then I think the scouts as well out there, you know, with Paul Fairclough, St. Oi Scouts. So that's a bit of recognition for yourself in terms of how you prepared them lads as well. So fair play to you there, Birchie. Emily.
Yeah, thanks, Pav. Just listening in there, so you've spoken about some of the younger players coming through, and earlier you were saying occasionally we have to adapt. It might be opposition that we have to adapt our game approach to if they're playing in a low block, for example. So how do you do that and bring them messages across, maybe to your younger players, but some of the senior players as well, but still be able to foster like a culture of creativity, innovation, while still saying this is how we need to get through the game? How do you find that balance?
It's a great question, because it's one of the hardest things, I think, because players want help. So they want to know how they can succeed in this game. So you've really got to try to provide them with the messages that are going to help them. But like now, in all the clubs I've been at, you can prepare for something all week and then you can get surprised on a weekend. And if the players have not been kind of given a little bit of freedom and creativity and ability to think for themselves via your coaching, then if you don't foster that, then it's really difficult for them to be able to adapt within the game. So like if the players are only following my message every single time, I think sometimes if what we can prepare against the back four a week and they come with a back five and the players get shocked, and then it's a really tough day when that happens. Whereas if you try to involve them, to give them a little bit of creativity, the training sessions that you do provide a little bit of challenge tactically for them, so they have to try to adjust. I think that can really help when you need to be adaptable, that you're not too rigid with the players.
That's brilliant, that, Birch. Really good around that. Just moving on a bit now in terms of linking back to Emily's point, and when we talk about style of play, okay, and it's come on the chat box quite a lot as well. Go on, describe to us your style of play, okay. So your principles, really take us on a bit of a journey with that now.
Okay, so I think the word that I want my players to be a little bit is courageous. Or brave, in terms of the way in which they want to be able to have the ball. So I have to try to foster an environment where they're not terrified of making a mistake, or it's really important that like we have some principles and that we're brave enough to stick to them, no matter what. That we try to play in a positive way. So we try to attack every game. And then I put adaptability, just because even within 90 minutes, you can play an almost perfect game. You can watch Man City play an almost perfect game. But if they're only 1-0 and it's 10 minutes to go and they make a few mistakes, you've still got to be able to adapt and absorb some pressure and defend the box in a certain way. So knowing when you've got to be able to adapt on a pitch to gain your result. So you always go in with your principles and what you really think. But adaptability is massive, because the good coaches, if we play for 45 minutes and totally dominate, a good coach is going to change, and then we have to adapt. So like, if you want to keep doing the things that you want to succeed, you have to be brave enough to then know when to adapt, either tactically, shape, personnel, things like that.
And just for the coaches on call here as well. A lot of them will be either head coaches, assistant coaches. They'll be 2-3 part of a management team, the multidisciplinary team. And just how important are those people around you? And you being the gaffer, but now being an assistant head coach as well. Yeah. And that sort of relation, how do you maintain that, and how important is that as well?
Well, again, really good question. For me, like, all the staff are the messengers. They're the ones that probably have the most contact time with the players, in terms of like informal chats and what the physio room's like, and the gym, and so like, I've always said, like, trust your staff to do the job that they're employed to do, because that's what they're there for. Like, I'm not going to micromanage the fitness coach about things that he should be doing, because I have to trust him that this is your role, and I want to give you as much responsibility within your role as possible. That way, I think every staff member wants to walk in and feel like they have a value to what's going on, a value to the process. So like, if they're all involved, I also think they're going to then, again, you get the buy-in from the staff, and they're going to be the ones that are, you as a manager, you a lot of the time when you have your meetings with the players, they tell you everything that they want to hear because they want to play in the next game. But it's all the other staff and all the small conversations and, you know, the lunches and the maybe walking to the gym or walking back from the analysis, and you see the players and all those staff are involved in that, and making sure that everybody's delivering like what you feel the principles and the core messages are is massive.
We've got a few questions, but I'm going to bring Vinny into it. And then we get Vinny to. We've got quite some good stuff, aren't we, with Vinny on the Q&A box as well, and we're really flying here in terms of time. We're doing well. So Bertie, well done. You've been top pro. So Vinny, just what is some of the question and Q&A's coming out in there? We'll give Bertie a bit of a break, I think. Yeah.
Well, Bertie, you've it's as if we planned this, by the way, because there's actually a question exactly about your staff. And again, let's take it back to National League context, or even when you're working in university, because that's what our audience is tonight. So 2 questions, and I'm going to combine the 2. One from Jonathan, which is talking about how you influence those other coaches. He's talking about being a goalkeeping coach himself, so that they are sharing that same message around game approach. And Kofi actually talks about work-life balance. So particularly when you're operating in that non-league system, where, you know, you certainly the guys on the call might be working as low as step 4, step 5, step 6, where it is very much a part-time role. Yeah. So chucking a lot at you there, but any thoughts about influencing your staff, particularly in those part-time roles?
Yeah, I mean, I've always found like engaging with the staff and involving them in the process during the week, whether that's preparing the training, preparing the games, making sure that they feel like they're important in it. Goalkeeping coaches, for example, like you don't just want to send them off and say, send me the goalies back in 15 minutes. I don't care what you do, which, you know, can be the case sometimes. So making sure that, you know, the goalkeeper is involved tactically in what we're doing in terms of building up, or what do the opposition, maybe what challenges are we going to get presented with, and having them help with that, the solutions to that. Every good staff team I've worked in is, you know, valued and involved the people around the key areas of the game. And then in terms of the work-life balance bit, I mean, that's probably for any coach anywhere is the biggest challenge, because it's, I mean, you know, I have it now in a totally different way. But when I was working university football, of course, it wasn't a full-time job. So I was doing a lot of other work in schools, in academies, to try to, you know, piece together what was a salary from football. So then the balance is that you're always busy at weekends, because that's when football tends to be played, and weeknights for part-time. So it's really, really difficult. I'd say that you need to have an off switch. You need to be able to step back, because also your mind is going to get stressed and fatigued. So you have to go in like with energy and a fresh mind. And sometimes, like when I've had periods away from the game, it really gives a good moment to reflect, and then you come back with more energy and new ideas. So making sure you give yourself that space to create a balance, especially non-league football, where some people have got 9 to 5 jobs, and then they're working every evening, and they're probably on the phone a lot. It's really important to make sure you find a balance there, so that you've always got the energy to deliver the way you want.
Yeah, thank you for those insights. And again, what's coming through really strongly is your investment in people. You know, we have a mantra here at the FA and England Football Learning about developing the person before the player. Yeah. But you're also talking there for me around developing the professional in terms of their personal qualities. And I think that's a really strong message that our guys can take on board, investing in your colleagues as people, that people first approach. So, yeah, thanks again for those insights. Back to you, Pav.
Yeah, brilliant, Vinny. Some real good stuff there on the Q&A box. Brilliant. Just a couple of things what eluded me in terms of, Bertie, you talked about sort of, you know, continuous learning. We've talked a lot about the players. We've talked about the environments you've worked in as well. But let's talk a bit about yourself in terms of the importance of winning, but also the need for continuous learning and improvement. Do you know what I mean? So you talked about switching off, and I always find when you switch off, you always reconnect back to football in a different way, don't you?
Mm.
As well. And I'm sure you don't switch off. I think you're like 24/7. Yeah. So just want to really sort of elaborate the importance of winning, right? And development, and then just that continuous learning. And is there been times when there's been some real gaps in your learning, and you talked about being courageous. What are the gaps been?
Yeah, I mean, if we go with like the winning bit first, I mean, it's a real catch-22 because you want to be able to foster and develop the environment, and maybe you have to change your style of play. Like I've gone into clubs and you've had to change it, and you can't do it. It's really difficult to just rock up into a club and change everything within a week. It's you know that it's a long process. So winning is the key to giving you time to be able to get to where you want to get to. So make no mistake about it. Like if you don't win the games, like you can be in big trouble. Like that's the nature of the beast. So trying to strike a balance, certainly if you go in, like I've gone in mid-season into clubs and trying to find the balance with, creating a stable environment for them to develop in. So you need a few wins to create like that stability, and then you can maybe build into it there. I think I've tried to go in and go all in from day one. It's really difficult. So like winning is the key to giving you more time to get to where you want to be, and get a bit of longevity out of it.
I love that because the way you've articulated that, winning gives you a bit of time, but when you get that time, you've got to utilize it.
Yeah.
Because you've got to see the cracks in the wall, because winning sometimes thinks, oh, we're okay, we're fine, but actually we're not. So I think I love that piece around when you have that time, it gives you a bit more time. Make sure you are on it with your staff, and then you're going to be the best versions of yourself. And then that continuous learning. Then talks about what you've done to make yourself better, either it's informal or formal qualifications, or mentoring, or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the formal stuff, I've done, through the coaching licenses, the UEFA B, UEFA A, and then the pro license, and each one gives you something a little bit different. And but of course, like from the formal stuff, you do a lot of learning. Just like if I've had gaps where I've been out maybe for 4 or 5 months, I've tried to go and watch other coaches, to watch other sports, talk to other coaches from different sports to see what they're doing. A little bit of that sort of stuff really gives you an insight into maybe. So I've gone and watched like individual sport training to see how they're working with individuals compared to like what we're doing with an invasion game, and then gone to other team sports to see maybe how they're working with their analysis stuff. And then, like when I was abroad, I went to classes for language. So I made sure that I learned Norwegian. I learned Swedish was a challenge, but I learned enough of that. When I went to Belgium, I started on French courses. So like even stuff like that, just to make sure that, again, like connecting with the people that are in the building. Like when I learned French at school and I was bad. And then when I went back to Belgium, I started learning. I got a French teacher in, and I was still bad. But I felt like the staff really respected the fact that I was willing to go to these classes in my spare time in the evenings and like try to like connect culturally a little bit. And the players liked it as well, if I could throw a little bit out there. And the same with the Norwegian. Like I managed to get pretty competent in terms of Norwegian, and could even do some little press bits in Norwegian. So I think that really helped culturally. So when I've had gaps in learning, I've tried to fill it in with stuff, not just football stuff, but stuff that I think can help in general.
Brilliant, Ian. Vinny, you want to come back in, and then we've got Emily back as well, and then Vinny, if you throw a question in there, and then we'll get Emily. I'm sure Emily's got a few more questions to throw in as well.
Yeah, Bertie, I just love. I'm sat here smiling. I have a mantra as a former PE teacher that every day is a school day, and you're living and breathing that in terms of. And I love your honesty around about your challenges with French.
Yeah.
And for everybody on the call, when we do our workouts within the grassroots program, And I'll link it into Jay's question in a moment when we talk about the concept of fail. It's never a fail, is it? It's a first attempt in learning.
Yeah,
and so, yeah,
absolutely.
I love your appetite for learning. Question from Jay, taking us more into that, back into that game approach. And again, if you can reference National League or part-time roles, more so. Set pieces, in terms of your time devoted to that, how does that, or how did that look and feel, particularly, let's say, when you were at Notts County?
Oh, set pieces.
Great question from Jay.
Yeah, it's a massive thing. Like, it's massive in the National League. I'd say it's one of those, as a manager, you know that you need to invest time in it, but it's like finding the moments in the week, because it's probably the thing that the players like to do least, because of the nature of the training, and actually trying to create as much realism around the set pieces and what you're going to face is difficult. I think analysis is just massive on the set pieces, like knowing what the delivery looks like, where they are, like I think that's the biggest part of it, is getting the analysis right. Gary tasked me with the attacking set pieces at Wolves this year, which we were good at, so I'm happy with that. But it's the first time this year that I've really delved into it as much. When I was in the National League, we faced so many, probably more corners and long throws, and a lot of set pieces, even from the halfway line, can get delivered, and a lot of the players are big. And our style of football meant that some of ours were not so big. So it was a vulnerability for us. We brought a guy in that was trying to work specifically with the set pieces. We tried to work with it almost on small bits every day, either with the deliverers or with the blockers or with the zonal players, so we put some emphasis into it. But it's certainly in non-league, I think set pieces is, if you can attack them and be creative with them, it's a huge weapon. But stopping goals going in from set pieces in National League was massive, and if I reflect on it, it probably should have had more grass time devoted to it. But it's really difficult when you're in the midst of it and you're wanting to play a certain style, and then you're spending half an hour on getting the defenders to head the ball away. Can be counterintuitive into what you're really trying to get them to do. So it's like, where do you invest the time? But certainly we got we had some problems against it. So yeah.
And if I may, it's fascinating that you've gone there to the defensive elements, the out of possession work around set plays, knowing how strongly your views are and the great work that you've done. And you've just referenced at Wolves, but also, in your previous roles. What about from an attacking point of view? I think the point's coming through loud and clear that there's a challenge, but could you share maybe one basic principle that you would have? And if you don't mind me giving one that I use, I operate at grassroots. I'm working currently with an under-15 squad, but I always emphasize the power of three. Let's have three different options with our attacking corners, for example. Is there anything that you can share with the guys on the call tonight in terms of the attacking set pieces?
Yeah, I mean, we had situations where, especially now, like you change 5 in the Premier League, and when you're changing so many players, that's when set pieces can be difficult in terms of like understanding communication, signals, knowing where the ball's going to go, because half of your outfield team is now that you've prepped with is now off, and you're during the game trying to prep the players coming on where they've got to be, and late in the game that can be a problem. So I sometimes think set pieces early in the game, they're much easier because the players know their roles and the delivery and the signals, and then it can become difficult as players are coming on and off the pitch. But yeah, so we had some like core ones similar to yourself, where we knew, like, if we're going near post, this is what it's going to look like, and this is what the signal will be, and if we're going far post, likewise. And then we would obviously adapt them based on, if you're facing a team that is full zonal or full marking, you've got slightly different principles around there. And I think it's like, you can see that you can be up against it in a game. Say you're at home and you can be up against it for 20 minutes, and then you get a counter attack and you're in a corner, and that corner creates an opportunity. Maybe you get another corner. You might not score from them, But I think it's a great way to swing momentum into the favour of your team. So, and likewise, you can have loads of attacks, and then you get a corner and you don't beat the front man, and the crowd moans, and then you're like, we've just relinquished some momentum here. So, like, knowing the value of maybe being able to create some positive momentum from attacking set plays is huge. So yeah, having a good plan for that and having all the players understanding exactly where they should be and the timing of it is really important.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Thanks, Bertie. Love that. Pav?
Tell you what, some brilliant questions coming on these Q&A boxes. I've got one here. It's just a text here. It's actually Craig Fagan from Maidstone. Sent me a text. It's quite an interesting one, Bertie, for you.
Yeah.
Being a manager, you've been a gaffer, you've been
Yeah.
an assistant, you're assistant head coach. How do you sometimes maybe think you have to park your values? And it's probably that question we asked earlier. Do you know what I mean? Park your values, and that's probably links back to probably the first webinar around self-awareness as well.
Yeah.
And then, but you bring in your ideas as well, because you want to be authentic and you've got ideas. And this is good for the coaches on there as well, because everybody wants to sort of feather on nest or try to ration out their thinking. So
yeah,
it's a great question from Craig.
Yeah, really good. Top question. Like, and I totally get it as well. The difference from when you're like the manager and you're in control really of how you want it to look. And then if you work on the staff, it is someone else's. But I think it helps that I've been a manager, because I know what that manager is now going through and what they and I think you always have to respect where the team wants to go. And as long as you're feeling like you're having your voice and opinion, and certainly, at Wolves, I'm really lucky that Gary, leans on the staff, and he really trusts us to give our honest opinion, and he asks for it. And then I have to know that sometimes he'll maybe take some of that advice, and sometimes he won't. But then knowing that that's my role, and I've got to respect that, that's really important to the whole process. That's how we operate as a team. And I know what I would want from my staff. So now it's good that now I'm on a staff, I think I know how they want me to do, to be honest, to give my genuine, honest feedback, not just say, yeah, I think that's good. Come at it from my eyes and my lens, so that all of us in the room have had like that decent discussion where we can put it all out on the table. And the hardest thing is, I think, if you are on a staff and maybe you feel like you don't have a voice, can be a real challenge if you're seeing it in a different way. I think as long as you've got that voice and that, and you feel like that's valued, then I think you can work with guys that maybe don't see everything exactly the same, and you can challenge each other on that. I think that's a healthy place to be.
And that sort of links to what John Oliver is asking here around your team talks at half time. Can you share with us what that sort of maybe structure looks like, and when you was at Notts County, how did you structure your team talks? What was going through your mind when you're working from dugout to the changing rooms as well? So that little gap in between there.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one to manage, the half time, because you've only got that small window to adapt, to make changes, and you have to use it as best you can. So my first at Notts County, the first thing I did was I would not go into the dressing room. I'd have someone in the staff go in the dressing room and just listen to what the players are saying, so that I could get a feel for what they're feeling in there. Like, we might be one up and we're playing, and the lads are bowling in like they're the greatest team in the world, thinking that they've sussed the game. I need to know that. Maybe we're 1-0 down and the lads are tearing each other's heads off, and actually I think we've been really good. So I think making sure someone knows what the group feels like is massive. Whilst that's happening, I'll sit with an analyst and my assistant and the other staff, and we'll certainly ask the question, like, does it look how we think it looks on the touchline? Because it may be missing, like what's working well, what's not working well, and then it's right, what do we need to do? So what do we need to tell the players? What's really important for them to carry into the second half? And are we clear on any changes that we need? Because this is our best window. Because if we go out, it's really hard to change it when the game's on and the crowd's going, and it's really difficult. It's the best opportunity. So I think having time for the players to shut down a little bit emotionally, for the staff to really look at what is actually happening on the, and discussing with the players, like where are we at?
And just an extension to that.
This is the go for.
I think we've.
Oh, I missed you then. Sorry.
Yeah, we're back on there, Birchie. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got you, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, just an extension on that before I get Vinny to ask the last question, because we're flying in and you're doing really well here. The question I was going to ask in terms of looking at, obviously, the coaches on the chat box as well. Oh, I think we've lost him.
Yeah, I think Bertie's gone, Pav.
Yeah, I think he'll be back on. He's coming on there. Yeah, he's resilient. He's resilient.
He just bent his run. Just bent his run.
Brilliant.
Sorry, guys. Don't know what happened there. Technical issue.
Brilliant. Yeah, the extension to that, what I was going to say was, just look at the audience as well. Managing the senior players as well and giving them a voice as well. Especially, I'm looking at, obviously, about a young manager, and if you look at it now, you look at some of the young talent that's coming through this system, like yourselves as well. And how did you manage some of the senior players in there, make sure they have a voice as well?
Yeah, I mean, like to Notts County, Michael Oyle was the captain. He was 39. He was older than me. But like 900 games. The first thing for me to do was to bring him directly into the office and just discuss like his experiences. What he feels is working well in the club at the moment, what's not working well in the club. Really tap into his knowledge, because he's obviously carrying 900 games and carrying an invaluable knowledge to me. So if I respect that, like, it's not going to go in a good direction. So even the players, like I had a player, Ben Turner, at Notts County, senior player, had played like Premier League, unbelievable character in the dressing room, and he wasn't playing as much as he'd like to towards the end of the season. So like for me but I still wanted to involve him, like bring him into the office and talk about the game. And so he knew he had a value, and then his value out on the training pitch and culturally was just phenomenal, like unbelievable guy. But I think if I'd have not given that respect as a senior player, like it could have gone the opposite way. I'd have lost a really important member of the squad. So even the lads that are not playing, certainly senior players that are coming towards the end and are not playing, that's a difficult situation. Players that are wrapping up their career, so much going on for them, because it's the end of their career, and that's a massive thing for a football player. Like, how can I value them still? How can I involve them still? Because that's like they're huge within that dressing room. So making them a part of it I've always found that to be crucially important. One, for the culture of the group, and two, my own survival.
Yeah, brilliant, Birchie. I'm just going to bring Emily in now, just for the last question. Emily, go for it.
Yeah, just to kind of summarise things now, I guess, Birchie, you've been so generous with your time and given some really, really good insight. I'm sure the coaches are going to take away so much. But if you can just kind of summarise the one piece of advice you would give to aspiring coaches on how they would, one, develop their own game model, game approach and philosophy, and then two, how they go about implementing it.
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of advice, I definitely think if the journey is long, it's probably, quite rich, and like trying to get to wherever you want to be really quick, you maybe make some shortcuts and miss on some important things that, and coaches and managers now are getting younger and younger. I don't know if I'm 41 now, so I hope I still qualify as young, but there's some really young ones now and really good ones, but like not not worrying to get there too fast, because actually the experience that you gain, like seeing different styles, experimenting with different ways of doing things, will only like build up your own way of doing it. And I think like also be really honest with the gaps in your game model and the gaps in the way in which you see it, because sometimes you have a tunnel vision around like, this is how I see the game and everybody else is wrong. Like maybe a bit of football snobbery or whatever it is, but this is, I see it this way. Like any other football is not good football or anything like that. But respecting all the different ways to succeed within the game, I think gives you a good understanding of maybe where your vulnerabilities are in your game model. And then that will probably help you find solutions when you're having difficult times within it.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it's a really important message, because I think we all do find them hard times, and we think that we must have something wrong in the approach, as opposed to trying to just find different ways and different solutions to go about things. So yeah, no, brilliant insight. Thank you very much, Ian. Yeah, it's been fantastic speaking with you tonight. I'm sure Pav and Vinny will say the same thing as well. So really appreciate all of the time. I'm sure coaches listening right now have taken loads away from it. So thank you.
Yeah,
Absolute pleasure, guys.
Thanks, Reggie.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much for your time, like Emily said, and Vinny. You're a gentleman, and we wish you the best in the future. I'll pop down, we'll catch up over a coffee sometime.
We'll do that.
But no, it's been brilliant insight, and obviously everybody who's on the Q&A box, I've taken a lot from it as well. But thank you again, and all the best to the family as well.
Thanks, mate. Top man. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ian. See you later.
Cheers. Thank you.
Really good insight there, Vinny, Emily. Any key messages for you, Vinny? What came up? What stuck out for yourself?
Yeah, I think for me, Pav, and I referenced it a few times, Birchie's authenticity was so strong. You know, we teed off, didn't we, in terms of, you know, what does your game approach, your philosophy, your game model, lots of terminology in there, isn't it? And there's significant crossover. But I think for me, his authenticity around investing in people, you know, and bringing his own personal values and principles to the table. And ultimately, I think for all the coaches and managers on the call tonight, I think that's all we can be, isn't it? We can only be ourselves. Whatever we believe in. My final piece is, it was so powerful to hear that he's worked within clubs, and it was Notts County that he referenced, whereby the results, the scoreline wasn't positive, but actually the performances were strong, and they were actually enabling his team to be a true version of themselves. And I think that's a mirror image of him as a person and a man. So yeah, that's the really powerful bit that's coming through for me, Pav.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's some really good stuff going in from the coaches on the Q&A function as well. So keep them coming, people. Emily, obviously you was in and out, working in the background. But great last question, by the way. Any things that resonated with yourself?
Yeah, I think that final piece that Ian alluded to there, about even though you want to be strong in your own values, and he alluded to it a couple of times when we were speaking, when he reflected on some of the games when he was in the National League, and he said he was quite stubborn and he would stick to his game approach and really believe in that, and that's a brilliant thing. But also remembering that it's a long journey, it's a process, and don't be scared, don't be afraid of picking up things along the way as well, and learning from other people's styles, maybe adapting when you're maybe a number 2 along the way, and learning from other people as well, and being able to add that as an extra tool to your toolkit, and find new solutions to the problems that are in each different game. So yeah, some really, really good insight. Really enjoyed it.
No, really good. So if we move on a bit, we've got some stuff for the Q&A, and then we'll just have a chat with the coaches, see what's okay. So well done, coaches. If you go to the next slide, yeah, well done, coaches. Obviously, a couple of websites you could access as well. Further Coachcast, England Football Learning, YouTube. Some brilliant insight on here, so you can dwell more into self, player, coaching, and the game. But most importantly, we have an event this week on the 26th at Manchester. You will be sent a link through as well. So please join this face-to-face webinar, which with Dave Shalimo and Stockport County, which should be a great event. From myself.
Just for the coach, sorry, Pav, just for the coaches that are with us, I think the link is in the chat box for you. So you will be able to access it there in the chat box. And yeah, look, it's a limited event, so get yourself signed up if you haven't done so already. I know that there has been quite a few sign up already. So it'd be brilliant to see you there at the Manchester event on the 26th. So the link's in the chat box. Thanks, Pav.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emily. I think just the last slide. And that sort of concludes, obviously, our National League System Coach Development Series. Finish off with Game Approach. Look forward to see some of you in Manchester. And just a couple of people to thank. Obviously, James Earl, John Falwell and Kiss Welburn. These three guys have certainly been the real generals, captain generals, who really led on this sort of National League System Coach Development Series. So a massive pat on the back for these gentlemen here, and all the deliverers up to obviously Coach Development Series 1, 2, 3, and 4 today have been immense. And hopefully everyone's got lots out of it. And watch this space, more to come. Thank you. God bless, and let's go watch the Euros.